Hello everyone, welcome back to the Laurbrary. I'm Laura. Today I'm going to be doing my February wrap up. I know I didn't get to upload much in February, but it's been crazy. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know I'm getting married in April. It's March 1st today. My mother literally texted me this morning and was like, "You're getting married next month." I was like, "Thanks, Mom. Yeah, I know. I'm going insane." But I am ready. Don't take that the wrong way. But things have been crazy. So the only thing I got to upload last month was my January wrap up. So today I am filming my February wrap up so I can get it up right at the beginning of March, and hopefully I can get some more videos up in the month. I apologize if I'm being kind of quiet because it's like 9 o'clock at night and the walls and ceiling at my apartment complex are incredibly thin, and I'm trying not to be disruptive like other people around me usually are because I'm a nice, responsible person. But before we start, I actually have one book from January that somehow Goodreads messed up my reading dates and didn't add this as a January book. It just added it as a red book. But in January, I read Beneath the Sugar Sky by Shauna McGuire, and this is the third book in the Wayward Children series. If you have not read this series, the first book is Every Heart a Doorway, and this is about Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, which is a home for children who have gone to other realities, other lands, kind of like Narnia, children who have fallen through the cracks into other lands. So, in the first book, we follow a new girl at the school, and it kind of ends up being a mystery, which is kind of strange because you don't think it's going to go that way. But I believe I gave that one 4 stars, and then there was Down Among the Sticks and Bones, which was kind of a prequel talking about two of the characters from the first book, and I did not like that book at all. I know a lot of people have, but I did not enjoy it. I think I gave it 2 stars because I just didn't like the writing. I didn't really like the characters, but I did decide to go ahead and read the third book, which like I said, is Beneath the Sugar Sky, and this goes back to the boarding school and follows some stuff that happens after the first book. I'm not going to explain much because some of it is spoilers for that one, but I did enjoy the writing in this one a lot more. I liked the characters and development. I did listen to this on audiobook, and I think it was really short, like 5 or 6 hours, so I finished it in one day at work, and if I remember correctly, the audiobook was really good, and I did end up giving this 4 stars. So that was the last book from January, just because Goodreads tried to lose it, but thankfully I came across it. So let's get started on the books that I read in February. The first book that I finished in February was The Unseen World by Liz Moore. And this book was pretty hyped up by several people on BookTube that I watch. I can't remember exactly who, but I hadn't heard a bad thing about this, so I was a little scared to read it. It was one of the first books I heard about on BookTube when I started watching early last year. And so I think I was a little scared that it wasn't going to be as good as people made it out to be. And I was wrong because this book was great. 5 stars, absolutely. If you don't know what this book is about, it is about a young girl named Ada Sibelius growing up with her single father, whose name is David Sibelius, and he works at kind of a tech company that is creating kind of an AI that will talk to people. So kind of like an early version of Siri. So he's working on this, and Ada is homeschooled and goes to work with him. And this part of the story is set in the 80s, at her childhood. But slowly, David starts to change, and it becomes very evident that he is losing his memory and who he is. And once he is losing who he is, they find out some things about him that they never knew, and that he might not be who they thought he was. So this book was amazing. Character development was great. Um, just the story, the plot line, and the writing. I mean, I listened to this on audiobook, but I definitely want to go back and read it, because there was just something about it that was beautiful. Liz Moore needs to write more, because I kind of feel like I'm going through withdrawals after that book, because it was just so beautiful. It was eloquent. There were just sentences, and I'm not the type to write down sentences or even highlight or tag, um, but there were just sentences that like would have stuck with me if I had written them down, because it was just her way of saying it, and the audiobook narrator did a great, wonderful job with this book and bringing the characters to life and just giving everyone a different character. Um, I laughed in this book. I cried. At first, when they got into the technical side of things, I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy it, because that's not usually my type of book, but maybe I'm wrong, because you'll see in another book that I really enjoyed this month, that also had scientific elements to it that I really enjoyed. But I think I really did enjoy the part where they talked about how, software back in the day was made and how it worked. I actually really, really enjoyed that. Um, I I really just love this book and can't wait to reread it in the future. It was just beautiful. If you haven't picked up this book, please do, because it's definitely going to be on my favorites for the year. The next book that I read in February was Hidden Bodies by Caroline Kepnes, and this is the sequel to her book You, which is about a stalker named Joe who is always referring to the person he's stalking just as you, and it's super scary. But you also feel bad for him sometimes, which makes you feel creeped out. But like I said, this is the sequel, and in it, Joe ends up going to California to stalk someone. I don't really want to give away too much um, about this book, because it will be a spoiler, but basically, that's all I'm going to say. I really enjoyed You. I believe I gave it 4 stars. It's been almost a year since I read it, I think, but I believe I gave it 4 stars. The writing was so creepy yet good. It was violent, but not horribly gory, if I remember. It was really messed up. It was really creepy. But this book was just kind of strange. I didn't say it, but I gave this 3.5 stars. I listened to the audiobook of this again. I didn't say this, but I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks because that's just easier for me to do during work, because I'm just tired when I get home and I have to do wedding planning stuff. Anyways, I did not like the writing in this book or the storyline as much, but it still did keep me wanting to listen to it. Like, I didn't like just stop and be like, I hate this, DNF. No, I actually wanted to know what was happening and how it would end. So that's why I gave it 3.5. It probably could just be a 3, because a 3 for me is still an enjoyable book. So it's probably between those. Like I said, I can't say much more about it, but I did somewhat like it, but it definitely was not a favorite, will not be a favorite, and was not even close to as creepy and awesome as the first book, You, was. The next book I finished in February was One Dark Throne by Kendare Blake, and I gave this 4 stars. I read Three Dark Crowns in January, and that book is about um, 3 princesses who are triplets, and they basically each have different power, and once they turn 16 have to fight to the death until one remains and becomes queen. That's just a quick recap. If you want to hear more about it, I talked about it in my January wrap up. But I gave that book 5 stars. I read it in 2 days, and I did start One Dark Throne immediately after. Maybe I should have given it some time, but I loved it so much that I just wanted to start the second one. It did take me quite a bit longer to get through, but towards the middle, I did finally get into it and I finished it really fast. I'm not going to talk too much about what happens in this book. Like I said, sequel, I don't want to do spoilers because I hate them myself. But I still enjoyed the writing. The characters, I didn't like them as much in this book. I found them quite annoying at times, so that's why I knocked off a little bit. Like I said, I found it boring at times, but I did still enjoy the writing, so that's why I gave it 4 stars. The next book comes out, I believe, either in the summer or fall, and I am so ready for it. The next book that I finished was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. And this was one of the first books I heard about on BookTube and was super excited to read. This is a book about a man named Jason Dessen who one night goes out and ends up getting attacked, and his entire life changes. That's about as much as I can tell you, but it is super duper creepy. Um, I listened to this on audiobook and it was creepy in that way. I do want to read the hard copy of this someday because I think it'll come across differently, but I did really, really enjoy this. And this is the other book that had some science-y parts to it, and I really, really enjoyed those parts. So I need to stop doubting myself and stop thinking that I don't like science in books just because I didn't like science in high school. Um, but like I said, I gave this 4 stars. Character development was great. The writing was amazing. I can't wait to read something else from Blake Crouch. I'm wanting to read his series, Pines, which is the Wayward Pines series. So I am super, super excited about that. I am so, so excited for this next book that I finished to talk about it, and that was The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. And this is the first book in her Broken Earth series. Oh my gosh. So, I hadn't even heard of this series until I heard about it on Sean from Eclectic Reads channel. He talked about how he wanted to read the third book, and how much he just loved the series. And I was in a super fantasy mood for like all of January and February. It's kind of dying down now. I'm kind of wanting to read some horror and historical fiction, but I was like, I need to get this now and read it. And my library had it, so I just grabbed it. And this is about a land that is, or a planet that is similar to Earth and has one big continent, kind of like Pangea, and it is called the Stillness. Now, in the Stillness, it's not very still because there are shakes or earthquakes all of the time. But there are also these people that are born um, into the stillness and can be born from normal humans, and they are called origins. And origins can um, quell these shakes or they can start them. And they are seen as horrible beings, like not as humans. They're just seen as these horrible abominations. People think that they should be killed when they are born because they think they're just gonna destroy everything and they're going to kill everyone. So the fifth season follows 3 main characters, and they are all women. And I believe maybe they're all women of color, which was really, really cool. I actually had no idea before I started reading this and saw her picture on the back that N.K. Jemisin is a woman of color. And I just don't know of many women of color or people of color in general who write fantasy books, so that made me even more excited for this. And I really loved that that was a little different. They talked about how normal people in this book were had dark skin in some places. So I really, really enjoyed that aspect of it, the diversity in the writing, because I feel like that doesn't happen a lot with fantasy. Anyways, we are following three main characters. We're following a little girl named Demaya, who is discovered to be an origin, and this man who is a guardian comes to take her to the fulcrum, which is where all of the origins learn to use their powers and contain them and everything. So that's one of the stories. The other story is of a woman named Cyanite, who is also an origin at the fulcrum, and she ends up having to go on a mission with another origin to quell an issue. So we follow her story with this origin who is much stronger with her and kind of almost becomes a mentor. And the last woman that we are following is a woman named Essen, who is also an origin, but she is an origin in secret. Um, and basically, the book starts off with her story, and her son has been killed by her husband because her husband found out that he was also an origin. He didn't know she was, but found out the son was and basically kills him. So that's not a spoiler, that's right at the beginning. But basically, he kills the son and then runs off with their daughter, and she leaves to try to find them. I don't remember if I already said this, but this book was a 5-star read for me. I went between listening to the audiobook and reading the hard copy. The audiobook was amazing. I don't remember the narrator's name, but she is awesome. Usually, I was kind of hard going into it because I was kind of wary going into it because a lot of times fantasy books, especially more high epic fantasy like this book, is really hard to listen to. But I didn't have too much trouble once I got past the first, just at the beginning. But narrator was awesome. Y'all, the characters in this book are just amazing. The character development is something on a whole other scale, and the writing, there's times where I just wanted to laugh out loud, and I was at work, so that's not good. And there's just some funny things in this book, but there's also some very serious things. And I just love the way that N.K. Jemisin wrote this book, um, and kind of brings the topic of race, but not in an in your face way. By some people, the origins are called ragas, which is a very derogatory term towards them. And if you think about what it almost sounds like, in a way, you can think about what it compares to for race. And this just brought a whole nother way of looking at race and culture. I think a lot of fantasy books do have culture, but it's shown in a different way and usually in a positive aspect. But this book definitely covered the positive at times, but more the negatives of um, how the civilization tended to act towards these people who are different than them. So I really love this book. I started the second one pretty soon afterwards. It's a little more slow going. I probably should have put more of a break in between it, but I'm still enjoying it, and I hope to finish the series this year because I absolutely am loving it. Like I said, 5 stars all around. The next book I finished was The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, and this is Jeanette Walls' memoir. I listened to this on audiobook, and it is narrated by the author. And this was made into a movie last year, and this book is about Jeanette's childhood. She had a very different childhood. Her parents were kind of almost nomads. They were both very smart people, but just didn't act right and didn't always take care of their children. You can tell they loved their children, but not as much as they loved themselves. Almost just in a very narcissistic personalities for both of them. And this book was just very, very interesting to hear about. At first, I was a little suspicious that it's not all true, but I can't I can't say that someone's story isn't true when it's supposed to be, unless someone, reveals that it's not. But I can see parents being like this. I've heard of horrible parents. I've seen some horrible parents before. But this book was really good. I gave it 4 stars. I don't feel like I can really rate the writing because it is someone's memoir. It'll make you cry, it'll make you laugh, it'll make you feel bad for people you don't think you should feel bad for, but you still will. But overall, this was a really good book. I want to read her other one, Half Broke Horses, which is about her grandmother's story. This video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to try to hurry up a little bit. The next book I read was The Kiss of Deception. I also listened to this on audiobook, and this is by, I didn't write down the author's name, and I used my phone to film, so I'm going to have to put it down below. But this is the first book in the Remnant Chronicles, and this is about Princess Leia, and she is supposed to be getting married, but decides to run away. And she has an assassin sent after her, and the man she was supposed to marry, the prince, also goes after her. And so this is just the story of how she decides to live her life and how they catch up to her and what ends up happening. This book was boring. I'm just gonna be honest. The first half of it was just snooze fest. The middle gets a little better, and then the end is a little more adventurous, but not great. I gave this 3 stars. I kind of want to continue just to know what happens, but like I said, I did give it only 3 stars. It was boring. This is a YA book, which I don't usually mind. I don't tend to read YA much anymore, but there are ones that I've really liked, but I'm really conflicted. I did put the next one on my TBR, but I might always decide that no, it's not worth it. I read the first one, I finished it. Is there really a need to continue if I didn't like it? Probably not. Next, I read Lock and Key, Volume 4 by Joe Hill, and this is a graphic novel series. I've talked about it before. 1 through 3, I believe I gave 1 and 2 4 stars, and I gave 3 stars, but number 4 I gave 5 stars. Absolutely the best one I have read. Automatically requested the 5th one afterwards, and I already have it, and I'm reading it and loving it too. I've talked about this book in previous wrap up, so if you want to know about it, you can look at that, or I'll put the link for the first book, the first one, down below, so you can look at the description for that one so you don't get spoiled. But absolutely love this one. Just continuing on. I'm almost scared that I almost quit this series. I don't think I was going to quit it, but I could have, because I did not like the last one that I read, but loved this one. If you've started the series and are unsure, please finish it, because this one was great. Next, I finished The Hike by Drew Magary, and this was a strange book. And it was really hard to figure out my feelings about it. Now, this book is about a man called Ben who goes to a meeting for his work, and he's going to spend the night at a hotel for this because it's a little ways away from his family. So he goes to the hotel, and he ends up taking a hike because there's a mountain like right next to this hotel. And on the hike, he gets lost, turned around, And then all of a sudden, things are really strange, and he's kind of in a different world with all these creepy, creepy monsters and all sorts of scary stuff. This book switched back and forth between me not being sure about my feelings, really liking it, and at times just being like, what just happened? I ultimately gave it 4 stars because I liked the ending a lot. So if you started this book or are unsure, just go ahead and finish it. I don't think it's the best written book I've ever read. The character development was pretty good actually. I think that was one of my favorite parts about it, even though the writing wasn't my favorite. It could have been better. But as someone who really likes those kind of stories, like getting lost and having to survive, like I loved Hatchet and The River as a kid. I actually reread them last year. But as someone who likes those kind of books, this did kind of meet those needs because I've been wanting to read one like that again. But like I said, it is just a strange, strange book. Um, I'll say just try it out if you like books like that. Because I can't, I can't really explain it more than what I said earlier. And the last book that I read in February was Only the Lucky by Linda Castillo, and this is a novella in the Kate Burkholder series. I can't really say much about what this is about, but if you've been with me since I started my channel several months ago, you'll know that I listen to almost all of the Kate Burkholder series. I listened to 8 of the books in that month, and so I took a little break and I finally got back to it, and I read this novella that wasn't very long, and then hopefully I'll get to number 9. I ended up giving this novella 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite of what she's written, but it really wasn't bad. It was just okay. So that was the last thing I read in February. So those were the 10 books I read in February and the one little tacked on that I forgot from January. I had a really good reading month, read a lot of really good things, am excited to read more in March. Let me know what you read in February, and if you enjoyed it, let me know if you've read any of these books and how you felt about them. So I really hope that you are all having a great day and have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.